Okay, all right, then we will proceed as is. I didn't want anyone to miss any of the fun stuff we're going to be doing today. So I am going to jump in and get going. So here we are, Summer Reading Program 2015. And this is a new application, as I mentioned. And why in the world did we change things? Well, there are a number of reasons. One, we're working towards getting more forms that are more online variations, things that are fillable, PDF fillable, you see there. What has been the major impetus for the change have been new directions that are being taken on the federal level, specifically with IMLS. They are changing the types of information they are going to be asking each state about the LSTA funds, and the types, the format of the information that they're requesting has changed radically. I was at a workshop in April to get more specifics about that. So what you're seeing with the changes that are on the form reflect the way that our federal granting agency is asking for information back from us. But aside from that, our time frames are the same. So we're not changing the time frames for the application, for information, for you to roll out your program, or for you to wrap up your program. But there are some differences in the application. So what are we doing today? I think today depending on the number of questions, and I do welcome as many questions, but I don't think I have more than 30 minutes tops of content, maybe a little less. So we do have plenty of time for your questions. We are going to, as you see here, do a quick look at the grant timeline. Most of you have that. We'll talk about a few of the new things that are coming in. Again, some from IMLS. There are also some changes that have been made on the federal level for all granting programs, no matter what agency. So we're seeing some of that too. The meat of the program is the third bullet there, which is the step-by-step going through the application. And then we'll touch on modifications, record keeping, no major changes there, just a review. And maybe if you're new to summer reading program or new to LSTA, that'll be an introduction for you. And then wrap up with contact information and Q&A. Okay, so the timeline that you have set before you, you've gotten most of this in the information that Robbie has sent out. But generally, we got started with the summer reading program last week, May 20th. The applications due June 5th. The last day for program revisions, budget revisions, would be September 4th. And you'll be wrapping everything up with your evaluations and reimbursement on October 9th. A few more specifics on that. Some of those days, here we are, about the 28th, we're doing the application webinar. June 5th, your application's due. We have another webinar planned for July 15th to go over the reimbursement and evaluation forms. These forms are changing as well. And then the other days that you saw before, September 4th, for your last day for grant changes, final evaluations due, and reimbursement and with the backup also due on that same day, postmarked to Robbie at that time. Okay, so let's take a look at a little of that new stuff that we're talking about. New to 2015. Some of you saw this risk assessment where we had you fill out a self-assessment form. And some of you are looking at this and maybe saying, what is she talking about? The risk assessment is something that is done every year for any library that receives LSTA funds. So if your library did not apply for any 2015 funds, whether a mini grant or a competitive grant like last fall, you would have received this self-assessment questionnaire. And this is something that has come to us from change on the federal level for all granting agencies. IMLS is included, but if for any reason you deal with any other federal agency with funds, you will see this type of thing from this. So this is across the board, all federal agencies have a new risk assessment requirement. So you would see it if you had not. If your library had been granted funds for a mini grant or for a competitive grant, they would have already completed this. So if I had this on file and the dollar amount for the sub-grants for summer reading are small, it doesn't significantly impact the risk assessment. So those of you that are scratching your head may be wondering what's going on here. This was likely already done. So you received it if we did not have one for your institution. And the risk assessment is not something where we say, oh, too bad, we're not going to give you any money. What it's designed, set up for us is to, if there's a reason that we would need to add a few extra steps in the monitoring program as it rolls out. So it's not to deny funds, it's just to make sure that there's enough interchange with the sub-grantee, especially if they're new, to make sure they're successful in their program. Okay, then the updated grant native form, it will look very much the same. I'll show you just a brief look at it in the next slide. But it is a little longer. Again, we had some additional information to add in. And so that makes our form no longer fit into nice 2 pages. We bleed over into a 3rd page. And then, as I mentioned, there will be some other forms that have changed. The reimbursement form, a significant change there. The final evaluation, and we will have a webinar, as we mentioned, July 15th, to go over these forms. So don't worry about those at this point. We will have some more specific information for you, although the forms on the reimbursement form will be available for you very soon. The final evaluation will definitely be available for you in time for our July 15th workshop. Okay, and as I mentioned, the grant native form, if you've seen one of ours before, they're very, very much the same. A few additional lines where we have DUNS numbers in there, and we now include your address where we hadn't had that listed before. And when you actually get your grant and aid form at the completion of a successful application, you will see it's a little longer. And that is, you will, again, you take a quick look over it, you'll see there's a few additional sections. Okay. And this is one quick look at the reimbursement form, just something to look forward to. And these are now completely in Excel, but we'll go over this one also step by step in the July workshop. So let's get into the meat of today's session, which is step by step through this brand new application. And again, I do want to thank you for your patience and efforts going through this. This is the first of all the applications that will be changing for the LSTA program. It is now PDF fillable form. You'll notice there's a lot more check boxes. That again is the way they are asking for information from us, from each state that receives LSTA allocations. The budget format is different, and all of these changes that we're doing map to the information, the final reports that we do to IMLS and that we will be asking from you. And with your application, when you get it, we are recommending that when you open your file that you immediately rename it. And I have an example there where you rename it and just add the name of your library at the end.
Can I please make one request here? Could you all please put your library name first and not last? That puts you guys in order when I save the file. So if you could just reverse that for me, I would really appreciate it.
Okay, no problem on that. Yeah, go ahead, just reverse that, pop that in front, and then you can, that gets it into a format that you can send direct to Robbie as an email attachment. Okay, so Christina, Robbie, do you have a response on initials? Like MNC, do you mean, instead of Mineral County? Okay, good. Let's carry on. So when you open your summer reading program application, it'll look a lot like this. You'll see that purple band across the top, and then you'll scan down, and some aspects of it looks very similar to what we had before, except now you have these boxes, blue boxes that are outlined in red. And these are the boxes in which you can complete the information for your library and about the information. So we start out very similar, the way we had before. Start out with a DUNS number. Now in federal land, everything runs on a DUNS number. And you've no doubt seen this before. Then we go through the information about the library, the basic general information that you've seen before. We go see, as I mentioned, we're following the same format that we had about the library, about the individuals that we'll be contacting. Let me go to this slide here. You see more of that general information on that first page. And when you get down to, you see 1 through 10, those are pretty much exactly what we had before. When you get to 11, we have the dollar amount already pre-filled in. This is the maximum dollar amount allocation for your application, and that's specific to the summer reading program. Now the DUNS number, let's see what Robbie's putting up that. Right, thank you, Robbie. The DUNS number is a Dun & Bradstreet number, and you probably, if you haven't used it in the past, you may want to double check with your library or your county. They may have that. If you do not have it, I see Robbie will help you identify that. There's a free website or a website where you can, if you don't have one, you can get it for free, or they will actually locate if there's one there. So, okay, we'll let that follow through. Number 12, again, is the same type of segment that we've had before. And this is where you estimate the number of persons that you will serve with the project. You can use your numbers from last year to get your best guess if you have an idea. If you think you're going to be significantly changing, maybe reorienting or doing some extra outreach, you might want to bump up those numbers for some reason or for that reason. But just to get a general number. And it's not all the children. You've probably heard this before. It's not all the children in your district. They don't likely, they're not likely all to come in, but it's your best guess of how many will participate in the program. Okay, so this is stuff we've seen before. Now let's get into a few things that haven't popped up, or at least haven't popped up in this format. You're taking a look now at where the checkboxes are coming in from our federal level. We have pre-selected the first 3 at the top part, the top third that you have there. These reflect required categories that have to be reported on the federal level. And we went in, Robbie and I went in to take a look at the subject headings, the intents, which is the subject heading essentially, the activity and the formats, and went through to see what fit best for the summer reading program as a whole. And since this was the first time through, we also double checked with our folks at the Washington office for this program, just to make sure we're dialed in with what they're looking for as well. So those first 3 are all filled in: project intent, activity, and format. Then we get to some check boxes here that identify some other specifics that we report on. And primary audience, you can pick out preschool children, school-age children, young adults, or all ages if you have a program that is going to be a whole family type program. And in the example that we're going through today, I have chosen all ages because the project that I'm doing for my fabulous library is going to be for the whole family or for all ages in the community. And what I have listed here, partners, if I'm planning to partner with any other library, group, or organization. And this is different than a sponsor. This will be different than if you get ice cream certificates from Baskin Robbins, or if you get certificates from pizza or whatever. Those are sponsors. We love to have them, but they are not actually partners doing something. But I thought I might have a partner. So I put it here because I think I'm planning to. If it doesn't turn out that you do have one, that will be reported at the final evaluation. But if you have one in mind, if you already have it dialed in, you put a yes here. If you don't have one and you're not planning to, that would be a no. So at locale, does your library, are you going to be offering this at more than one location? And for my library, yes, I have 2 locations that I'm going to be rolling this program out. So I don't, at this point, don't name them, but you will name them in your final evaluation. So here I put yes, it will be in more than one location. And these are radio buttons. You should be able to choose only one. And then if you don't, if you're doing only one location, then you will not fill anything in the number of expected library sites. If you feel like putting in a 0, you are allowed to put in a 0, but you can proceed and leave it blank if you have checked no. Okay, Robbie, this is where my question comes into play, and I missed that question. Is that something I need to address?
Okay, hold on one second, Diane. So Jeanette's question was, for activity instruction and format, NLA is selected in there. NLA selected is in there, but can we add to those? So I think it's on the next slide.
It's okay. Let me scroll back. Okay, I think I'm following where you want to know where we've pre-selected items, and can you add to that, such as in instruction, that I'm doing program and I'm doing presentations. I'm doing more than that.
Diane, you're pulling out again.
Your mic is on. There we go. I think it's because we can't have dual mics on for things to come across. There's a potential that you can add that information in the next section. What you see, and this could change over time because this will be our first year reporting in the new IMLS system. On some of these, they allow us only one item to select. And we ran into that specifically already under activity where they list instruction and they had program, presentation, and they had 3 different things, but you could select only one. And I did send a question to our program officer in Washington, D.C., and I said, well, summer reading program, we do have presentations. They have storytellers, and then they have programs where they have staff-led programs related to that. And I asked for direction on that. They asked us to select presentation, and then they will identify in the follow-up information that it was program and presentation. So that one, who knows, maybe in a future year they will allow us to choose more than one. At this point, we pre-selected the ones that on their advice. So I hope that's answering your question. And Jeanette, if that's not, please chat your question back in, or I can, Robbie and I can talk to you at a later time if you don't think it fits into this location of the presentation. Okay, I am going to go on to the next part of the application, and that is a familiar section, which we have always called What Will You Do? Schedule of Activities. This is your implementation. And what you see here is the type of information that Robbie is going to be looking for, getting an idea of what the what the staff involvement will be, and what the summer reading program activities. So this is an example of what my fabulous library is going to do. Starting when the funding is in place for May and July. That's when we're going to get underway, select and purchase items. We're going to get those instructional supplies, craft activities, the craft materials. We're going to get all that dialed in and planning to get that underway first part of July so I can have that on hand as soon as possible. Staff in general, July and August is when we're rolling out the activities itself for the reading program, and I have a note to have the details listed below. Then September and October, I have planned in my schedule that I'm going to submit the request for reimbursement and complete the evaluation. So I am mapping out time for myself to take care of the responsibilities for the reading program, or I will be assigning that to staff that will be helping complete the requirements for the summer reading program. Yes, okay, and then in the list below, I detail out by date. It's pretty much by week. I don't have the specific date here, but I'm for the week of July 6th. We're starting out with a storyteller. It's going to be rolled out at both of my locations, and it's a whole family event. We're going to start out just with the reading records, have identify reading goals. Going to look to start some adult and teen book groups. So that's one of the directions that I want to go with my program this year. Then going to have a display of the theme books and audio, lists of e-materials and other resources that reflect the theme of the program this year. Then I go from there week by week, different things that I'm going to do, identifying staff-led programs. Book clubs still have an option for the book clubs to meet at the library, identify that the programs are good. We're going to have crafts for children, and you see different things going on as we go through. And then we're wrapping up the program on August 3rd with a storytelling workshop for the whole family. And the workshop is going to be presented at both locations by our local storyteller. Okay, so that gives you the idea of the types of information that Robbie is going to be looking for in your summer reading program application. And this will tie into the next section we're going to, which is budgets. And, well, excuse me, will be after this. It will tie in directly to budget. But evaluation, important aspects. Again, we have defined categories that are being looked for at the federal level. So you're seeing some of that reflected here, and that's exactly why we have the questions the way they are. So for library programs, I'm looking to have 8 programs, 8 library programs, and these are the programs that are staff-led, not specifically the presenters. So the proposed length, I'm thinking 45, 50 minutes. These are your best estimates. We will be asking at the final evaluation to report what the average length of the programs are. And you don't have to have a stopwatch going, but just a general, a good average time for the programs that are staff-led. Now I'm also going to have 4 performances, and that is with my storyteller. So my storyteller is going to do 2 performances or 2 presentations at the start, where they're going to do a storytelling session. And then at the end, they are going to do, my same wonderful person is going to be doing a storytelling workshop to teach adults and children how to do some of their own storytelling. I'm looking, again, library materials I'm hoping to get about 50 items. Maybe that's a little low, but that's what I'm guessing at this point. And I also put down there in circulation. I don't have to have any number here. It's just to alert you that we will be asking for circulation information at the end. And Amy, I see your question. Presentations are not included in the expected program. That's right. The definitions that they're using for us from the federal level is programs are more staff-led, and presentations are when you bring somebody in to do a presentation or a performance, if you have a puppeteer, something of that sort, where it's not staff-led. Okay. Yes, and I see where Robbie has answered that, where 2 hours, so that would be your average on what we're looking at there. So as you're seeing this rolled out, you see several items are they have specific categories now, and they have a plan on the federal level to try to compare more information. So they have set up some of these things in specific ways. And I see Robbie is answering a question there. And we're checking in to see if it's a formal program that Christine's talking about. So, and a performance or presentation, the individual does not have to be paid. It's likely a paid performer for most of us, but we do have individuals that will come in.
Diane, I actually have a question.
Go for it.
And this may be something that we need to discuss further, but a lot of what these folks will be asking for in their grant proposals is going to be monies to provide presentations. So like a puppet show, or like somewhere where they're paying a presenter to come in. How and where are those going to be listed?
That would be, there's two places where that information is listed. If you have the individual already picked out, like let's say I was really on top of it on June 5th or June 4th, and had the person already dialed in, I would have potentially put it in, I'll go back, put it back in here in the activities, and I could have listed under local storyteller, and if I had that individual already locked in, then I could put that information in here. The level of information that you have, like if it could change, you have one person set up and they said, well, I think I can make the date, but on June 4th, they're saying I can't confirm that until Monday, and you have to put your application in Friday. Then at that point, you would identify that the performer that or the type of performer where you could put local storyteller. There's also a place when we get to budget where you can identify a bit more information that we'll see. Is that getting to where you wanted to go, Robbie?
Yes.
Okay, good.
That'll work.
Okay, very good. All right, so we have some specific output measures that we're looking for that will match up and map into what we will be reporting to the federal level. And then at the bottom of that page, we have outcome measures for this project. The outcome measure that you see here is the same that was in the program last year. And I filled in for my library that I will survey participants to see if I've gotten any new people into the library that were attracted to the summer reading program, because now I'm offering it as a family community. I haven't done this in the past, so we're looking to see if we increase awareness and maybe get some new individuals in. The survey will also ask the participants about how they view the value of the programs, and I'll be looking at suggestions from them for next year as far as things to make the participation better. So this particular segment for outcome measures, the community will be more aware of SRP and its benefits, has not changed. So this area, you can use the same type of measurement tool, likely a survey that you've used in the past, to identify if individuals are more aware. Robbie, did you have an item that you wanted to add to this segment?
No, right now we're going to stick with this particular outcome measure. I would love for you to include something similar to what Diane is including here, either surveys or collecting comment cards at the end of your program, or something that you can tabulate and include in your evaluation process. We will be looking at making this outcome measure more robust in the future, but we'll talk to you and have discussions with you before we do that, so that it's something that you believe you can tabulate and calculate and gather the information on.
Okay, so again, one area that remains the same from last year, and you can use, as I mentioned, use the same approach that you used in previous years to gather this type of information. So now let's get on to the budget, and the budget does look completely different. This again reflects how we will be reporting all federal funds to IMLS, the Institute of Museums and Library Services, in the future. There will be breakdowns, and we'll be reporting every project based on how the LSTA was used, if there was local cash or in-kind. Now, recall for summer reading program, a match is not required. If you have funds to report, that's fine, but is not required, as some of our other grants do require a match. So on that part, it's not a requirement, even though I have it listed here. So from my example here, I'm going to get some print materials, I'm going to get some AV materials, and the amounts that I've identified for about $1,000 for print, I've allocated $580 for AV materials. I don't have any electronic ones off the top that I've decided at this point. And you'll see that I put those two numbers in and I've broken them out. We are looking for you to do the same. The budget grid that you have here is listed as or set up so it will automatically total. I believe that, as Robbie indicated, we don't need a breakdown per se of how much is juvenile, how much is easy reading, or in my case, for my project, how much would be adult or children's. That won't be required in the budget at this point. However, in the description, I will be do have to add additional information. The description section does have to include additional information. So you will include print materials, will include hard copy, paperback materials for all ages, purchased from several vendors, and I indicate the likely vendors. You are not stuck with just those vendors if once you get into it, it's like, oh, there's this fabulous title over here. This is you're identifying who you are likely to be ordering from. The same with AV materials. Maybe you've already started looking at some of it, and I've already decided all the AV I want at Amazon, and that's all that's the sum total of it there. So what will happen at the final evaluation is you will see something very much like this, and then in the description you will verify the information that where you were able to locate your materials. And this is, again, a category. That's how we will be reporting it to the federal level. So let's see, Carol has put in, so I don't need to include other funding sources, just LSTA. You may include other funding sources. Since it's not required to have a match or have in-kind for summer reading, I did not put it in my example. If you may put it in, and that would be perfectly acceptable, and then you would put it in as cash that would be the local cash if you purchased from either your local funds for Churchill County, or you might have already decided I'm going to use some of my state collection development money, which you probably don't have yet, so that's unlikely. But you could put that in. But yes, thank you, Robbie. It is not required. So that is on your level to identify. So I'm looking at my contract fees, and this is where I would put the storyteller that I'm going to have, where they're going to do their talk, their visit, and their workshop. And so I'm having two presentations, two at the start and two at the end, and that's one at each library site. So that comes to a grand total of $1,000. I will have, and my detail below says 4 presentations by one author or storyteller, 2 presentations at each site. So that comes at $250, and that's how I get to my $1,000 that's listed there. Then my other, and you have 3 categories to put information in, and so the last one would be craft supplies. This would be instructional, other, as it has, if you've done mini grants or other grants, the other category encompasses quite a lot of possibilities. So in the other category, I've decided I have, as you saw in my activities, I'm going to be doing a few programs with crafts and some DIY workshop stuff. So this is where I'm getting my materials, $175, and they're going to be from Amazon or Oriental Trading Company and the local craft store. Again, if I find things at some other locations, I can still use those. I'm not locked into this. And if I decide not to use one of these, like I've ultimately looked at Oriental Trading and go, I'm not, they really don't have what I need. I thought they had it, or I like it better someplace else. You are, again, not required to use all the vendors that you list in the description here. This is just to identify where you expect to go. So reimbursement grants for performers create issues for us. Do we have to use this grant to pay for performers, or can we just purchase materials? As Robbie indicated, no, you don't have to use this grant for to get your performers. If it's easier for you to get it from a different funding category, if it's easier to do it out of your friends group if you have that, or some other organization wants to donate that. I'm just trying to have an example here of if you do use LSTA funds for it, how it should look in the budget and how it would look generally in the application. But the program, you can, if your program, you want to use 100% of your allocation for materials, that can be all $2,900 can be in that first category where we had library materials. So I hope that, and that's true of any of these. If you wanted 100% of your stuff, into getting your performers, and that works for you, and you're going to do your materials from from your local funds, it can be in any orientation that we have here. Okay. So thank you so much. I'm glad you guys have been asking questions as we go along, and that is exactly what we were hoping for as you're working through this. And then we just track circulation and report. And that's ultimately, yep, that's what we were looking for. It's just listed there, and that reflects some of the information that you already collect. Thank you, Amy. Okay, now again, we have automatic totals that will come into this page. One thing, if you have looked at this, you see something below the project total that we have not shown before. This is something that is now required for us to include. This was a change that happened with some sweeping regulation changes that went into place in December. And you see where there's the option to put in indirect cost rate. And that again is an option. You see below that, you can choose one where you identify there'll be no indirect costs. There is federally negotiated indirect cost rate. If you have one, you probably know it, or your people at the county know it. Or if you do not have an indirect cost rate, you can ask for up to 10% for indirect costs. Now this, you have a cap of $2,900. for your program. So the maximum amount that you can request, whether you ask for indirect costs or whether you don't, is $2,900. If your institution insists that you need to ask for indirect costs, that subtracts from the money that you have available from your program. But you will have to make that choice as to whether you want to request no indirect costs or you want to ask for indirect costs. I would be glad to talk to you more about this. It's a rather complex issue, and it tends to affect the larger dollar competitive grants is where this will have more bearing. But based on the new federal regulations, this has to be offered on every level. So you will see that question there. If you choose one of these, like if you choose no indirect costs, then there's you don't fill anything else in. The indirect cost rate requested would be 0. The indirect cost would be 0, and there would be no comments listed. If you choose any of the others, or you think you need to choose that, feel free to contact either Robbie or me, and I will work through this part with you. But this is now something that we are required to put on every sub-grant application, no matter what the dollar amount is. So that's why you see it here. As I said, any questions on that part, please feel free to ask. But the bottom line, and this is going to be true across the board, even into the larger competitive grants, is that there will be a cap on the grants, and the indirect cost rate is included in that maximum dollar amount. It's not in addition to. So thank you for bearing through that part. And Robbie looks like maybe she has a comment on
that. For us, for this particular instant, for the SRP subgrant, the $2,900 is the cap. So just to reiterate, if you are asking for the indirect cost, and you would take 5% of 2,900, and that would be where that 145 is, and that would take away from what other spending you have. So I just wanted to use our exact example for that.
Yes. Okay. So that's one of those new things that we're working through, and we'd be glad to work through that part with you. So the absolute last section that we have here is the signature page. This page you can put in, type in the date, but the signature, of course, we don't have electronic, so we still need good old regular signatures on here. If you put in the date field, this is set as a date field, so it is for 2 numerals for the month, 2 for the date, and 4 for the year. So you would type in 06/01/2015 because you're on top of it, and you're days ahead of when it's actually due. What would happen if you just typed in 6/1/15? You would get a notice like this that would indicate this is a date, a pre-formatted field that requires the date, and then you just hit OK, and you would go back and type in the dates the way they needed to be seen. So that's one place where you would see an error message. The other place is when you're trying to wrap up your application where you might hit an error message is you recall the fields at the beginning where you saw them in blue and they had a border of red. And the red is a field that requires your input. So those will be ones that require you to fill in the field. And if you leave it blank, you would get a message that that field needs to be completed before you can finalize the application. Okay, now the way we have things set up in the budget, you should be able to, if you enter a number and then you go, oh, wait a minute, no, I don't really want to spend that much, you should be able to go in, change numbers, and for it to recalculate. A couple of times when I've gone through and tested this, sometimes it wouldn't recalculate at least as soon as I clicked it, if I clicked on another number, it would recalculate. I tried, another place where I had a blank, I would put in a 0 and it would recalculate. Let us know if you run into any of those recalculation issues, but it's supposed to recalculate if you change a number. So we'll work through with you on that if you do run into anything. That's the only other little thing I've run into working through this application myself. So that's the basics, step by step, line by line for the application. And I expect that you might run into some questions as you're trying to fill out the form. Robbie would be available. I'm available for this through all of next week. So you should be able to get one of us so you can complete your application within the required time frame. So let me go on to the next section that I have, and these last few things will wrap up pretty quickly. Grant modification, this has not changed from the previous years. That there is an opportunity to make changes. Sometimes things get out of control, or are out of our ability to control, and we do just have to make some changes because something has changed on us. And this is the basics of this. If you have a change in a budget category that's 10% or more of any category, it requires pre-approval. You'll need to do a justification and planned expenses. If it's under 10%, none of the categories change up more than 9% or 9.99%, I guess. Then you would contact Robbie as your SRP coordinator and work through getting a memo to the file before you make those changes as well. It's always better to do this beforehand. If you have any program changes, contact Robbie as soon as possible to make sure that it is not going to affect you being able to use your full allotment to the maximum. And thanks, Carol, for joining us for as long as you could. And then the grant revision form, if you've seen it, it's another form that has not changed. You'll see that pretty much the same. Record keeping, again, if you've been with us and through the program before, this hasn't changed much. If you're new or you're working on this after a little break, what you keep would be your grant application, award letter, any communication, so you keep copies of those in your file. For your LSTA expenditures, the same type of thing. You keep copies of your invoices, receipts, purchase orders, and any items that were created with grant funds. So if you created a specialty brochure, some specialty outreach material, or you put notification in the paper, that type of thing would be included in your record keeping as well. Okay, that was just another little reminder, and then we're wrapping things up quickly here for the contact information. So your primary contact person, of course, is Robbie. She's your SRP coordinator. Her general information listed there. There are a lot of things that have changed on the federal level, and especially in this round of your summer reading program applications. I'm also available for questions on that. I'd recommend sending them to Robbie first. She will likely have most of the information you need, but if we come up against something technical, either with the application or with some of the new questions that are being asked of us from the federal level, I'm definitely involved in the process to make sure we're all successful getting through the SRP application phase and into the program. That's pretty much what I have at this point. My last slide I have listed is Q&A.
And I don't have anything else to add at this point. Does anybody have any pressing questions, or would you like to kind of ruminate on everything that Diane has presented? One of the important pieces about making sure to let me know if you have questions is so that when the next person answers the question, if it is a question I don't know and that I do need to go to Diane for, then Diane and I can work through that so I have a better way of answering that. So definitely keep me in the loop on those questions. You are very welcome to include both Diane and I in the questions, so just copy the email to both of us. That way, whoever can respond to you first can answer the question, and then we all have the proper answer. Since we are in the guinea pig testing stage, as it were, I'd rather make sure that Diane is in the loop on all answers because she is the LSDA coordinator, and so she is the one that's